Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Team Whooleygan Crochet Chat Live. I don't know if you guys saw, I renamed our live, and I thought that since we call ourselves Team Whooleygan, that just seems to be the right name for us. So before I get over to the chat room and see who's here, I just wanted to go through a couple things. For those of you who are new, if you want to learn a whole lot more about me, go ahead and visit my website. You can see it right here at the bottom of the screen. And you'll find everything there, including how to subscribe to my newsletter, which is probably the #1 thing I can recommend to you. As this newsletter subscriber, you will get all of my new releases at 25% off. You'll be the first to know about all the new stuff going on, and you'll be able to take classes, purchase patterns, all sorts of stuff. So make sure you subscribe to my newsletter while you're there. The second thing I want to let you all know is make sure to follow me on Instagram at Karen Whooley. And I have a new little thing about Instagram I just figured out this morning, is that I can actually upload these lives to IGTV. So if you would want to watch these on Instagram starting today, I'm going to upload these lives once they're done up to IGTV. And what's really nice about IGTV is that I can actually automatically render the captions of everything I'm saying at the bottom. It'll take maybe an hour or two to do it, but they will put everything I'm saying, so if you need to silence something, you can still read what I'm saying. So follow me on Instagram. I'm doing a whole lot of stuff this month on Instagram, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. You can also, for those of you who are watching me on Rumble, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. If you are watching on Rumble, above this video, you should see a green button that says subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. And if you've never used Rumble before, here is my affiliate link scrolling at the bottom, where you can register to become a member and then find my channel, and you can subscribe and see me there as well. Currently, I cannot stream live to Rumble, but that's supposedly happening soon. I don't know what soon means, because they told us that before Christmas. I don't know what soon means, but they keep saying soon. So hopefully, eventually, it will go on Rumble. And if you're watching here, either live or after the fact on YouTube, make sure that you are you hit the subscribe button here too, so that you are notified every time I go live and anytime I upload a video. So those are the two main things I want to talk about there. Let's go over to the comments in the chat room and see how who's here. Busy Hooker's here, and she just said she smashed the button because she missed last week. I'm glad you're here, Busy Hooker. I'm welcome again. I'm glad to see you. And there's Brat and Linda. So glad you are here and you smashed that like button too. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, Dawn. And Patricia is here. And Busy Hooker is here. Great. Hope you guys are having a great week. It's Wednesday, and I did want to tell you guys that I am going to continue to do Wednesday at 9 a.m. For these chats. I decided to do that because after, I think I mentioned to you that every Thursday I'm going to start treatments, and I start tomorrow. I'm finding that Monday and Tuesday are my busy days, and today I have stuff to do, don't get me wrong, but Wednesday's kind of more of a slow down day for me, so we're going to keep Wednesdays at 9 a.m. So if that works for all of you, I will be here. And if not, you can always watch the replay either here on Rumble or now on Instagram. I'm really kind of excited for that. I wanted to first show you, I finally got my sample Pache. I know a lot of people are probably calling it Pace. But this pattern is actually called Pache. It's Italian for peace. And this is my 2021 free pattern for anyone who subscribes to my newsletter. So I thought I'd show you the actual sample. I just got it back yesterday from the photographer. She kept forgetting to put it in the mail. So I finally got it. this is Pache. If you aren't subscribed to my newsletter, you might want to subscribe if you really like this this shawl pattern. It's the only way you can get this pattern. I do not have it for sale. It won't be for sale until January 1st, 2022. So if you want it now and you want it for free, subscribe to my newsletter. And if you are subscribed to my newsletter and did not get the pattern, when I send out my newsletter this week, I will have a link for you to click to download the pattern for those who are already subscribed. So I use a software called Book Funnel that serves the pattern, and so it automatically checks to make sure that you are subscribed to the newsletter. So I just want to make you guys aware that that's why it's you have to go through a few other steps. Because I'm finding that a lot of people will share the link and people who aren't subscribed are getting my free patterns, and I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure it's only for my subscribers, because you guys let me into your inbox every week. So that's a perk you get. So or every other week, I should say. But yeah, this is Pache. I really like it because it's very simple. It's a double crochet half circle, and I did it on purpose to start this panel being just all double crochets, just striping it, because I want beginners to feel like they can do this pattern. So it's all double crochet in the main field, and then the edging is just literally chain loop spaces with some double and triples in there to make the edging. So if you're interested in that pattern, subscribe to my newsletter. So first thing you'll get from me is this shawl. And let's see, Brat's mom says, I love the colors in Pache. It does look peaceful. It is peaceful looking, isn't it? Unfortunately, the yarn company that I use the yarn is no longer in business. She was one of my favorite dyers. Black Trillium Fibers. If you go through in my patterns and my books, you'll see I have a lot of patterns using her yarns. She's one of the first indie dyers I ever worked with, and she's decided, I guess last April, she shut her business down. So I had these two skeins. I was planning to do something with them, and I thought, what better way to do my last couple projects with her yarns, or use up her last couple yarns that I had in my stash, and you do a free pattern for you guys. So it's really a pretty yarn. Let's see, Linda also says, Linda emailed me last night. She signed up for your newsletter and was thrilled with the 3-pack. Oh, cool. Okay. Yay. Okay. I'll have to look and see my new subscribers later, just to make to make sure I say hello to her. So it's awesome that she likes the pattern. I try to make the free pattern interesting for everyone, whether they're a beginner or an advanced crocheter. But I always want to make sure that my beginners don't feel intimidated with the pattern. So the free pattern is always going to be something more on the simple side with some extra stuff just to help them stretch their wings a little. Busy Hooker says, oh, Pirating Yarn Edition. Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, over the years, I've been doing this almost 23 years now, and I've had a lot of patterns pirated. At the beginning, I used to hunt them down and make them stop, but nowadays, it's just, I've come to the conclusion that there are going to be people out there who are dishonest, but they sharing my pattern with somebody, or they get it for free somehow they're going to learn my name, and then they're going to start looking for my other patterns, and they're going to find me on my website and stuff like that. So I try not to let it bother me. I mean, if I find out that there's a site that's just serving my patterns, then I will go into the legal battle with that. But it's too expensive to take these people to court, but my attorney can write a cease and desist letter, and that has helped a lot and stuff like that. So yeah, we have to be careful. Another thing I wanted to show you is I finally finished my socks. They are finished, both socks. I think I told you guys that last week. I'm just going to put them up here again. This is the Valentine sock kit. So she doesn't have these colors anymore, but from Nanette Wake's studio. But she has now St. Patrick's Day sock kits, and you can knit or crochet with them. There's enough yarn to do either or. I just wanted to do this one in knit because I liked, I really like the way this striped in knitting. I have, this is what I've got left of that big skein, so I might play with it in crochet and see how it comes up. I don't have a whole lot of the brown. I think this is all I got left of the brown, but I can play with that and see how it looks striped. But I'm really excited. So check out Nanette's site. It's probably the last time I'll be promoting it unless I do another project with hers. But I wanted to let you guys know that they're done. I'm so excited. So those are done. The other thing I want to show you is my what's on my hook right now. You guys have seen this yarn a bunch of times. Yes, last week I showed it to you wound. This is Sock Obsession Yarns Smooth Sock in the colorway Rush Hour, and I'm starting a new project for my next book. You can kind of see the orange today. I'm still playing with the lighting. This is much better than it was, but it's still that. I think that orange is just hard to get good lighting on. So I wanted to show you guys that. It's just getting started. Next week you probably see a little bit more, but I do want to share all that with you. So let me go back to the comments here for a sec. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff. Let's see. Brat's mom, I don't share my patterns always. Yes, that's what I've been teaching people that, trying to teach people that for years. It's so important because I know in like the recipes, everybody shares recipes, but that's really, if you start looking into the legal things, sharing recipes is even copyright issues. So they don't, over the years, people have just always shared, and there's nothing wrong with sharing. I mean, if you have a book and you let someone borrow it, that's great, but don't make a copy of it and give it to somebody, because that's pirating and stealing. And we designers, I mean, we'll never be rich as a crochet designer, but we definitely, this is how I make my living. I don't have another job. This is what I do. I have for 22 years, almost 23 now. So this is how I make extra income for our family, and it allowed me to stay home with my kids, things like that. I mean, it was never a huge amount of income. My husband is the breadwinner, but that's just kind of how it is. Oh, cute. Which ones were you talking about? Are you talking about the socks, Busy Hooker? I love these socks. I can't wait to start wearing them a lot. Yep. And Linda said too, darling socks. I love them. Oh, and the Rush Hour. Yes, and I think that's what she was going for. If I remember the little blurb about this colorway, it does look like the sun. The sunset, and the double crochets that I'm using here kind of give you that look of the how the sky looks when it's just the colors are totally irregular in the sunset, or it's just beautiful. So I'm not an orange person. I mean blue, pinks, purples. That's I'm the cool jewel tones. That's always been me, and I just love this yarn. I can't even tell you. So excited. I can't wait to get it done to see what it's going to look like. Busy Hooker said, yes, specifically the socks, but it's all cute. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, against some of the clouds. And that's, exactly. The gray that the clouds kind of get, and the orange color. It's got a little bit of pink in there too, that, how when you see the sunset and it fades into the clouds, it's like really orange, and then it kind of goes to pink before it gets to the gray part. That's exactly what it looks like. And I'm hoping that my photographer, when we get to the photography stage of my book, can really pull those colors out. So, yeah. So, and one other thing I want to talk to you guys about, and I think I mentioned this last week, but I finally made a decision. I am definitely moving my website off of WordPress, and I am moving to Shopify because Shopify is so much more stable, has so many more options, and it's going to cost me yearly the same as my WordPress site with less work. I've mentioned before that I have a degree in management information systems. I've written software. I have always, coded my own website. Anytime I needed to do something special, I do it myself. So, oops, let me take that banner off here really quick. I've always done it myself, but I'm finding that WordPress is getting so complex these days that if something goes wrong, it takes me a week or two. In the last time I had a really major problem. And then I'm finding that it's not calculating sales tax correctly. For some reason in January, it's either overcharging or undercharging sales tax, which in Washington State is a pain. I mean, we have 36,000 tax codes. So, and I have to have a special software to update those. So, Shopify will automatically work with our Department of Revenue for that. So that makes things easy. I've also had WordPress lately overcharging people for shipping when they order books. I mean, I had someone here in the state of Washington get charged over $20 to ship one of my books that usually only costs like $4 to ship. So I'm way frustrated, guys. I can't even begin to tell you how way frustrated I am. So I did some research this week, and Shopify seems to be the cart I'm going. So, or the cart that's going to be more stable for me. So my website's not changing until probably, I'm hoping to get everything onto Shopify by April 1st. I can't guarantee that. Because I've got a lot of products and I've got to make sure everything's working properly. But you will see a big switch. And so I will let you guys know ahead of time so that if you go to my website, try to read a blog post or check out something educational or whatever, you have some advance notice that my site might be down for a little bit while everything's migrating, so that my KarenWhooley.com points to Shopify instead of my old site. But I just want to make you aware of that because that is happening, and I'm actually very excited. So that's going to be an interesting thing for me. So hopefully it'll work better for you guys too. I'm sure a lot of you know that most of the yarn dyers out there use Shopify. I would say there's a lot of people use Etsy too. Etsy. The reason I'm not going the Etsy route is because I want to have a website where I can blog on and things like that. And then Etsy's fees have gotten out of control. So for sellers. So everybody I know that uses Etsy either wants to migrate off or is not happy about the fees. So I'm not going to go that way. Let's see, Busy Hooker. Yes, oh my God, sunsets in Colorado, especially right when the sun starts slipping behind the mountains. Yes. It gets bright with all kinds of colors. I'm going to put that up here for a sec. Yeah, I agree. It's really, sunsets are just beautiful. Anyway, I've always loved sunsets. I love sunrises too. I could sit on my front porch and watch a sunrise every once in a while too. So I love that. Let's see, I just looked at Rush Hour Colorway and it said no products were found without description. She's probably hasn't dyed it yet, Linda. She has a plan where she dyes the colors in order, in certain orders and things like that. But what I would do is, if you're really interested in that Rush Hour Colorway, is to send her an email and ask her when she's going to be dyeing that next. Tell her I sent you, because she's been watching my posts with me posting this. Yesterday, I did a little mini video on my reels in Instagram, because that's another thing I talk about. I'm doing daily videos this month for International Crochet Month. So she saw that video coming up. So definitely ask her about it. She knows I'm using it for design, so definitely ask. She's really nice to work with too. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to say is Happy March. It's International Crochet Month, if you didn't know that already. A lot of people call it Craft Month, but it's been traditionally since, oh gosh, since before I started even designing. Everybody called this a March internet. Well, it used to be National Crochet Month, but now we've gone International Crochet Month. So this year, I've been trying to expand my Instagram. You guys all know that. And so I decided that I was going to do a video every day for International Crochet Month. And I posted a graphic on Instagram that has daily prompts. And I do have one person that's doing it with me. So if you are interested in doing it, you don't have to do the video. You could do it as just an image. That's fine. But every day is a prompt. Today is your favorite color of yarn. I am going to be working on that video when I get done here. It's just going to be a simple video, but it is going to be basically show you my favorite color of yarn. So yesterday was what's on my hook, and the first day was meet the maker. So I have a video of me talking about how I start, well, not really how I started, but who I am and what I do, my family, where I live, that kind of thing. Everybody knows what I do for the most part. So if you want to join me, even if you don't want to participate but you want to watch, make sure you go check out my Instagram and check out what I'm doing for International Crochet Month. Let's see. This has nothing to do with today's podcast, but the Zoom. Oh, Linda, I saw your email this morning. I'll shoot you an email later today or after this video, and because I'm going to be doing email really quick before I do my daily post. So I will shoot you an email to troubleshoot it. I don't think you did something wrong. I think it's on my end. So don't worry about that. I will fix that. Okay, guys. So anybody else have a question for me or want to talk about something before I get started with the gauge? Little part of the gauge video that I want to do. Anybody else want to talk about something or just want to pop in and say hi? There's a few of you out there watching. You're welcome, Linda. You're welcome. Okay, well, I'm going to just run right into this little video. Hang on, I need to move my camera. I was trying to get the overhead camera out of the way before I started this video. So hang on one second. And, there we are. Okay, so let's talk about gauge here for a second. And as we are talking about gauge, I'm gonna ramble probably or at least talk for a little bit here at the beginning, and then go ahead and ask questions. Hi, Deborah. It's good to see you. I was just getting into my gauge little mini class, I guess. I'm gonna give you just a little basics about what gauge is. If I sign up for Instagram, do I sign up for stuff like I did with Rumble? For your stuff like I did with Rumble. What you want to do, Linda, hang on one sec. If you sign up for Instagram, you just find me, Karen, at Karen Whooley. It's the @ Karen Whooley. And you follow me there. And then once you follow me there, you'll start to see all my video. And you don't need to do it on your phone. I think you and I have talked about this before. You can do it on your laptop. And you just check it every once in a while, and you can see my videos and things like that. So that's how you find and that's how you follow other designers or other dyers. Like I follow a lot of indie dyers, so that's how you do that. Okay, so let's go back to gauge here. I did a little gauge swatch here. It's all double crochet in worsted weight yarn, and I used a size J hook, 6 millimeter J hook to do this. And I did it on purpose because the way the camera works here, oh, I should turn this light on too. There we go. So my face is going to look really weird, but I really want you to be able to see what I'm doing here. I did it in bigger stitches because my camera doesn't allow me to zoom in this StreamYard software that I use for going live. So I wanted you to be able to see where all the stitches were and things like that. But this square is what you want to do no matter what type of project you're doing. You want at least 6 inches, and I think I'm going to use this really quick. I think this is just at 6 inches, okay, or just a little over 6 inches. So you always want to have at least 6 inches. If you're using lace weight yarn, you could probably do 5 inches. But I recommend always 6 inches minimum for your gauge swatch. Now this, again, I just did double crochet, but if you're doing something that might be shells or some sort of textured stitch, you want to make your gauge swatch in that textured stitch, because usually the gauge will say, or the gauge information will say, in pattern or using X stitch, this is the measurements of your gauge. So there's 2 reasons why you want to, or a few reasons really, why you want to have it so big. Because most gauge says 4 inches, 4 inches. You never want to measure on the edge or the bottom of the swatch, because the stitches are going to sit a little different. Here in double crochet, you've got these big holes, first of all, from the turning chains. See how I've got holes here? You can tighten those up by, instead of chaining 3, you can chain 2, sorry. You can tighten those up, but that's still, the edge of your fabric's always going to be a little off. This is not blocked. I didn't have time to block it, but usually you'll block it, and even if you block your swatch, the edges are still going to be different. Here I used the foundation double crochet to make this go a little faster, and so that I could have a straight edge instead of having to fuss with my hook to make a chain in the double crochet. And that changes your gauge a little bit at the bottom of the swatch. So, and then even here at the top, I haven't worked into those stitches yet. So there's not as big a hole between the stitches as there are as you go down. You can see there's bigger holes down there. So there's things that are definitely different at the edges. So you always want to measure in the middle here somewhere. Okay, so you have a good inch on either edge and on top and bottom before you measure. So does that make sense so far, guys? Anybody have a question on that? Okay, I'm going to keep going then. Next thing I want to talk about is what you use to get gauge. Now, I used a tape measure here to measure the swatch, and that's the usual thing most people use is a tape measure. I have seen people use a carpenter's tape measure. I have it in a pinch when I can't find my soft tape measures. You can do that as well. You've probably seen these before. This is a knit check from Susan Bates. Boy used to make these. Other companies make these too. They usually have like the hook and needle sizes. They have a ruler on 2 edges, but they also have this hole here that you can put on your fabric to measure your stitches. But what I don't like about these is that it only gives you 2 inches rather than 4 inches. So when this is the only thing I have available to me, I always use the longer edge here where there's a ruler at the bottom here. Can you guys see that? I use the 4 inches here. I rarely use this because I need 4 inches to get proper gauge. That's the other thing, is you need to have 4 inches. Certain stitch patterns won't come out properly. So how do I even explain this? Like shells. Sometimes you'll see 3 shells equals 3 inches rather than 4 inches. And that's just because the texture stitches, sometimes if it's like, you can't get an even shell, or 2.5 shells equals 3 inches, something like that. You can't get an even thing when you're checking gauge. So that's why I always say you've got to measure 4. You've got to measure 4. And then the other gauge I want to show you guys, and I showed this to my Zoom class the other night, and I think I showed you guys this last week. This is the knit check from Ackerworks. It's 3D printed, and what I like about this one is that, first of all, you've got, here's your row gauge, here's your stitch gauge. This is 4 inches, oops, and this is 4 inches, so you can easily count. But the other thing is that with the tape measure, for example, and I'm going to be using the tape measure because I think it's easier to see what I'm doing on video with this. But with the tape measure, I can put this down, but when I can pull my fabric, you see, to get the gauge I want. With this guy, it's got little teeth. I don't know if you guys can see those little teeth on all these points here. And those teeth, you set it up to measure your gauge, and it won't move. I mean, if you move your fabric, those teeth hold the fabric, so you've actually got your good gauge, even if you accidentally pull on your fabric. So, and you can measure your 4 inches both directions. Okay, so once we do that, okay, so let's talk about actually measuring gauge. Again, we want 4 inches, so on the tape measure, make sure, can you see that? I don't know if you can see, there you go, there's the 4. So you want to measure 4 inches. So I go 0 to 4, and what I do is I always put 0 somewhere an inch in. I'm going to do stitches first. Somewhere an inch in the middle of this fabric. And when you put 0 down, you want 0 to be, I'm putting it right here on the edge of this stitch. I'm kind of opening it wide. Can you guys see that? I'm opening it, the opening there wide so you can see it, but it's right on the edge of the stitch. And then I'm going to put, here's where 4 is. Okay, so now I can count my stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 stitches in 4 inches. So that if you wanted to go down to 1 inch, that's 3 stitches per inch. But you always want to measure 4 inches and then divide it by 4 if you need to get down to the inch. Because sometimes you need to know that there's a 1/4 inch, or there's a 1/2 inch, or 1/3 of an inch, or an 1/8 of an inch. Because if you're making a garment, every 1/4, every 1/8, every, how do we do that? Okay, so if you have 4, or let's say you have 2 1/8 inch, or 2 1/8 stitches in an inch, okay? So for every inch, you're adding an extra 1/8. So if you're off by an 1/8 of an inch, so let's say you wanted 2 stitches rather than 2 1/8 stitches. For every inch, you're going to add an 8. And so over 8 repeats, 8 stitches, so that's 16 inches, you're adding, or every 16 stitches, you're adding an extra 2 stitches. Does that make sense? Or adding an extra stitch, which is going to make things wider. I don't know how to explain that in a better way. So if you needed 2 inches, or 2 stitches per inch, and you have 2 1/8, and you did, so if you did 2 stitches, you need 16 stitches to make 4 inches, right? No, 8 inches. 16, but if you had that extra 1/8 in there, you would have more stitches than what's required of the gauge. Does that make sense? Okay. And it's not so fussy with afghans or scarves or even cowls. You can be off a little bit. The only thing is that if you want something the exact size, you know, if you want a cowl to be 24 inches circumference and your gauge is too large, you have too few stitches per inch, or too many stitches in there, you are going to have a long dragging cowl. If you are too tight, it's going to be less than 24 inches and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I can't get this over my head. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, same thing with rows. I'm going to turn this way so it's easier to see. We're going rows here. Again, I'm going to go at least an inch in. I'm going to start here at this ridge. And the 4 ends before the last row here. So for 4 inches, I've got 2, 4, 6, 7 rows in 4 inches. Does that make sense? So I counted 7 rows. If you need to go down to an inch, you can divide 7 by 4, and you get, oh, good question. One and I don't even have a calculator here right now. So, but it's a little over an inch, or a row per inch. So gauge is important. That's how you measure it. If you're working on something like, will this work? I don't know that this is big enough, but it'll give you an idea. A lot of times you will see in a project, I don't know if you can see these shells right here. These shells, there's a shell here, there's a shell there, there's 3 shells in a row here. You can measure the group of shells, like here's 3 inches. And these 3 shells actually are less than 3 inches. So when you're going to measure in a texture, it's going to say, okay, how many repeats? Sometimes you're going to see a pattern that says 8 shells equals, 4 inches, or 7 shells equals 4 inches, or 3 shells equals 4 inches. So you just want to measure from edge to edge of those shells and see if you're in that range. Does that make sense? So that's just my little mini lesson on gauge, but I'll answer any questions you guys have on gauge. Deborah, I see you talking about double crochets. I want to get through gauge first, and then I'll go back to your questions about double crochets and granny squares and things like that. Let's see, busy hooker. I'm so bad at here we go. So bad at measurements. That's why I crochet things I don't need exact measurements. And the way my husband, yep, that's me too though. I have that computer brain that I keep talking about, but this gauge is the hardest thing about being a designer, is because especially when I'm doing garments and even shawls. I mean, even shawls, you need to have gauge on there, because if you don't match the gauge on some shawls, you will be able to cover an elephant with it, or it'll be for a stuffed animal. I mean, it depends on how loose or how tight you are. Now, if you have too many stitches per inch, so let's say gauge says you need 5 stitches per inch and you have 7, that means you're too tight. So you want to go up 1 to 2 hook sizes and try the gauge swatch again. Okay? If you are too loose, that means you have less stitches. It says 5 and you have 4 instead of 5. You need to tighten up. So you can either go down 1 or 2 hook sizes, or you can just tighten your stitches up sometimes. Same thing with rows. If you are too tight, you will have more rows. So let's say they say 2 rows per inch. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Let's say it says 2 rows per inch. And, oops, it didn't come off. There we go. Say it says 2 rows per inch here, but you have 3. That means you're too tight. What I usually tell people, if your stitch gauge is right and your row gauge is off and you're too tight on your row gauge, is don't pull as you do the last part of your stitch. Just keep it loose. Don't tighten things up. That'll make your stitches stay taller. If it says 2 stitches or 2 rows per inch and you have 1.5 rows, that means you're too loose and you do need to pull a little more to tighten up. So that's really important with gauge as well. Let's see. Laura says, "Hi Laura, I didn't see you pop in. Good to know I'm not the only one who's absolutely." It's a long learning process, and I'm still learning gauge. These different fibers will cause different things. Going from one brand of hook to a different brand. Let's say you can't find the hook that you originally started with, and you're using an H, and it was a boy, and the only hook you have in H right now is a wooden hook. It changes your gauge. The other thing that changes your gauge is if you're stressed or too relaxed. I always tell people you don't want to crochet when you're super mad, and you don't want to crochet when you're super drunk, because one is going to make you super tight and one is going to make you so loose that you won't even know what's going on. So those are a couple things that will affect. I mean, I have learned that I cannot crochet when I am watching football. The only thing I can do when I'm watching football is knit socks, because I need to be tight, and I'm always stressed watching the Seahawks. The Seahawks they're going to give me a heart attack every single game. So that's one of the things I've learned over the years. So football means knit socks, because I can't crochet doing that. Let's see. I might have to watch this video over several times if I ever need to gauge. You should. I mean, that's why I'm making this video. And this is just a basic, very mini lesson. So, yes. Okay. So hang on a second, guys. I just saw some numbers in there and I was trying to figure out. But yes, that's why I'm making this video, is so that you guys can see a little mini lesson. I mean, there's so much more to gauge than this. There's differences between blocked gauge and just standard gauge. Every pattern I write is to blocked gauge. I block all my swatches, and that's a whole other lesson. If you guys want to know about that, we can talk about that another time. So you guys gave me my math for my dividing 7 by 4 is 1.75, so it's just short of 2, and that 1/4 inch is important, because if you need two inches or two rows per inch, a 1/4 inch over those 4 sets of 2 rows is going to be shorting yourself an inch, so your gauge is too tight. So that's really important right there. There's a fine line between a change in hook sizes that you have chosen the wrong yarn for how you crochet. Yes, that is another thing too. Sometimes you can. Okay, here's a good example. I use fingering weight a lot for my shawls. This is a fingering weight shawl. This rush hour is a fingering weight. Even these socks are fingering weight yarn. I'm gonna shut off my overhead here for a sec. So fingering weight yarns, though, you'll see different dyers will say fingering, light fingering, heavy fingering, bulky fingering. So if you are, let's say you're doing a sweater in one of my sweaters, and I say it's fingering weight. When I say fingering weight, it means it is a standard fingering weight. If I say light fingering, it means it's between fingering and lace. It's a finer, and you'll notice that with different brands. You'll notice that with different fibers, that what one person says is fingering, another person's is a little bit thinner. So I will sometimes qualify that, and I know some other designers qualify that. A lot of times the dyers or the bigger yarn companies will qualify that as well. But if I say straight on fingering, you don't want to get a light fingering and you don't want to get a heavy fingering. You want to get a fingering weight yarn. And that could be why your gauge is off, because maybe you have a bulkier fingering weight than I do. And maybe a yarn company just labeled it fingering, but it's not really a true fingering. It's more a sport or baby yarn rather than a fingering. So that's a very common issue too. Yeah. So now, do you block before measurements or after measurements? There's a lot of debate there. I always block before. I do blocked. All of my gauges are blocked. And again, well, let me take that back. I will measure before I block, but the final measurements of my pattern will always be to blocked gauge. I measure before because I want to see how much it changes with blocking. That's just, again, my computer brain. It also allows me, as I'm designing something, to know, okay, I'm half an inch smaller before I block. You know, it's going to be a half an inch. So if I'm going to do a sweater for a bust of 36, I need to adjust how many stitches for my unblocked gauge so that when I block it, I will get a 36-inch bust. And that's a whole other class. I'm not even going to teach that because there are other teachers out there who can teach that far better than I can. But But there is a lot of debate about whether it should be blocked or unblocked. I find that my patterns come out better when I do blocked gauge. I have far fewer issues with block gauge. So anybody else have a question on gauge at all? Anything if you want to talk about, you want to tell me a story about something you get that your gauge was wrong or right, or one of the things I've learned from knitters is that you can also, if you just cannot get gauge, and this is probably another lesson in its own too, but if you cannot get gauge and you can do a little bit of math, like the sweater I made for myself, there was no way I was getting the gauge that they had, no matter what yarn I used. I mean, I tried fingering, I tried worsted, I tried DK, could not get the gauge they were asking. If you watched me last year during Christmas time, I was knitting a sweater for myself. I don't have it here right now. I could not get gauge. So one of the things I did learn is that if you can do a little bit of math, you can figure out, okay, if I have this gauge, should I go up a size and just crochet it to the size above and it'll still fit me? Or should I go down to the next size, go down a size because I'm too loose, and will that size fit me? So that's another option that you can do, is if you just cannot get the gauge and it's multiple sizes, go up, you're too tight, go up a size and you might fit in that. It might come out to your measurements. If it's too loose, go down a size and check the math and see if that's going to fit you. So those are a couple things you can do too, when you really, really, really can't get gauge. So anybody else have a comment? Did that make sense? Or did I scare you off on gauge even more? I know a lot of people just don't want to take the time. They feel like it's a waste of yarn. But what I can tell you is that you can, once you've got, even if you block the swatch, you can unravel it. You don't have to cut it. You can block it, still connected to your skein, and figure out what your gauge is, and then unravel it. And then what I do is I steam it and kind of stretch it so that it doesn't have all the kinks in it. And then you can start your project. So you don't have to cut your yarn to do a gauge swatch. A lot of people will do gauge swatches. They'll do a gauge swatch and then they'll end it off, and then they'll put a slip knot farther up the yarn and start another gauge with a different hook. And then they'll end that one off and maybe do a third hook. And they'll have 3 swatches that are connected to each other, not cut, and you can reuse that yarn. The only yarn I wouldn't do that with is mohair. With mohair, I would cut, and I wouldn't try to undo it after you block it. That's just the only yarn that I can honestly recommend that with. Okay. Anybody question? That was a lot on gauge. It was more than I was going to talk about. But Deborah's got a couple questions for me here, so I'm going to just bring hers up. Can you sometime talk about standing double crochet? What do you mean by standing, Deborah? I don't know what that means. Instead of using the chain 3 at the beginning of a row or in a granny square. Oh, are you talking about... Are you talking about instead of using a chain to actually start with a double crochet or a modified double crochet? Is that what you're talking about? Deborah, can you pop in and let me know what you're talking about exactly? Because one of the things with double crochets, I mean, I just showed you that when we were doing the swatch. This is a chain 3. I did a chain 3 because that's the usual thing. And those holes, like I said before, will show up and they make your gauge go off a little. You can tighten that up by chaining 2 instead of 3. Some people will also, if they chain 2, instead of skipping the first double crochet, they'll just double crochet into that first stitch. I do that a lot. I've never heard the term standing double crochet because Busy Hooker said she's tried it. If it's what I'm thinking it is, I don't like it much either. I mean, I've done it, but I've done it so that I've also used what they call a linked double crochet at the beginning. I don't link them all the way across, but I'll do the beginning stitch as a linked if I want something really firm and sturdy, but it's also thicker. Again, you wouldn't want to measure gauge with that. I think a standing double crochet is where you have the chain on the hook and start with, yes, okay, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what is known as a linked double crochet, actually. It's the beginning linked double crochet. People keep renaming things, so that's why I don't know. It's the one where, I don't have any yarn here that I can use. It's where you chain up 3 and then you insert your hook into the second chain from the hook and pull up a loop, and then you insert into the first stitch and pull up a loop. So you have your 3 loops, then you yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Is that what I'm talking about? Is that what a standing double crochet? Is that what you're talking about? Anybody? The yarn isn't attached. Okay, that I have never heard of, so I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll have to look that up then. No idea. I mean, unless it's like joining with a single crochet at the top of a stitch, is it that kind of thing? You don't chain up? The slip knot is on the hook and you start. So it's basically joining with a double crochet rather than joining with a single crochet or a slip stitch. You can do that if you're changing yarns. Okay, you can do that. I find it super uncomfortable to do. I would rather chain up or do a linked double crochet at the beginning of the row than do with the double crochet. Let me grab the skein here. Let me use this color so that, okay. So you were saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to not use my overhead camera for this, but, okay, so there's a slip knot on the hook, and I am going to yarn over, insert into this stitch. I'm not going to insert into this first one here. And then yarn over and yarn over. I find it incredibly awkward. I also find that I would rather do a turning chain, especially if I'm changing colors or starting a different yarn, only because it's awkward to keep the even tension. That's what the purpose of the turning chain is to help you keep your tension even. And if you look at this, I mean, it breaks. I don't know if let me pull the hook out. I don't know if you can see that real well, but it breaks the continuity of the side of the rows. So if you're changing with a new color, there's something about having that slip stitch or chaining, changing colors at the end of the row and then chaining up that keeps everything nice and smooth on the side. Now, if you're going to edge it, that is that's a no-brainer. I mean, you could still do it that way. I just found, oops, as I throw my crochet hook, I find that it's very awkward to do, and especially for beginners. I would never teach that as to a beginner. I might teach that to someone who really, really, really doesn't want to do a chain and using that, but that's all that I would do. So I don't find it as a stitch that I would want to do. So that's just me. I'm a traditionalist in my crochet, I guess. So does that make sense? I like to chain 2 and single crochet in the second chain for my starting double crochet. You can do that too. A lot of people will do that. I know Shannon Bowlesby of the Shiba Guys uses that a lot. He does that a lot, and I have done that in the past. I have a few patterns out there that I have done that because that's what I needed at the edge. that's the other thing is that different projects are going to require different things on the edges. I mean, like the shawl I'm doing now, the main, excuse me, the main body of the shawl is double crocheted. I'm chaining 2 and double crocheting in the very first stitch. I'm not skipping the first stitch. So what that's doing, I don't know if you guys can see that. There's a little bit of that'll straighten out when I block it, but it gives it kind of a finished edge by having every other row have a turning chain that's not being used, that I don't have to put an edging on the top edge of my shawl. And I like that. I like that more rustic look on the edge. But you don't have to necessarily do that. I mean, when you're doing the pattern itself, you could chain 3 and turn and skip the first stitch and we'll do it that way. I just like the way it looks. So, and as the designer, that's kind of my design, what I do. So let's see. I've been messing around Tunisian simple stitch for my next project and I'm having troubles. I can do it. It's just messy. That with Tunisian, honestly, Tunisian tension is something I cannot teach. I can tell you when you're too loose or too tight, but I can't teach you how to keep everything even. What I can tell you though is that especially with simple stitch or any of the stitches really, when you go into the first vertical bar and pull up a loop, I usually try to tighten everything a little bit so that the first loop on the hook that's always on the hook, that one is the same height and everything as the second one. And then I put my finger, I'm going to pretend this is a Tunisian hook, but as I go under, I put my finger on top of the hook, the loop that's on the hook before the one I'm working, so that it doesn't tighten or loosen up. So I'm a knife holder. If you're a pencil holder, that's a little different. You're going to have to find a way to do that. But when I do Tunisian especially, I'm always knife hold. So I insert, I yarn over, pull up a loop, and when that loop's on the hook, I tighten it to where I want it to be, and I put my finger on it. And then I insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then tighten it up where I want it to be, and then move my fingers forward. Let's see. My tension is usually really good, except when I'm trying something new. Yes. Trying something new is going to, as always, your tension's always going to be off. The other time that I've noticed as a teacher, when people's tension is off is when they are taking a class, whether it's live or on Zoom now even. They have the teacher watching for the most part. They need to show their work, and their tension is either too loose or too tight depending on how comfortable they are in the class. So that's definitely something. I have issues with getting the last stitch on the end right, so it ends up slanted on one side. That's tension also, Laura. I mean, it happens. Tunisian too. You just have to you just have to practice. It's literally practice. I don't know how else to say it. I'm doing color changes in my projects. I missed a loop in one of my previous rows. Now it's all off with the color too. I'm going to put it, there you go. You can do that too. I mean, sometimes you can call them a design feature when you make a mistake like that. I do that too. I'm one of those teachers too when I'm teaching different techniques. When you're first getting started, like if I was teaching a basic Tunisian class, I would never make somebody rip out the first few rows if it's wrong, because I want you to see your growth as you're working. So using things for scrap gowns or or just a sampler if a lot of crocheters that I have taught over the years have a notebook of all their classes that they've taken, and anything that's wrong, they always put it in the notebook and write notes on why it's wrong so that they can have something to go back to. So that's a little tip for you too. If you're teaching yourself something or using YouTube and you kind of figure it out that it's wrong and you know why it's wrong, once you get going, you write yourself a note and keep it in a notebook. too much work if it was, yeah, no. What I would recommend, Busy Hooker, is that with Tunisian, before you actually start a project, just do like a 12 stitch scarf and just keep working, 12, 20 to 20 stitches, and just keep working with the, same yarn, and just keep working until you figure out your tension. Then once you figure out your tension, then start your project. I would never learn Tunisian on a project. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I know there's other people that would say different, but for me, learning a new technique is more important than, learning the technique is better than messing up your project. Okay. Let's see. I have gotten to the point that I count my rows. I'm going to put this up. Gotten to the point that I count my rows all the time. As my old blacksmith used to say, when a horse was frightened, sorrow has made me wise. Yes. Yeah. For most, even when you're just doing straight double crochets, I'll maybe stop every second or third row and count just to make sure I haven't missed one. Because I have done that before where I've gone 25 rows not knowing I missed a stitch, and then I have to rip all those rows out. So that's a really good tip. Let's see, Laura says, I started doing grannies for a temperature blanket, then changed my mind in January to do straight rows, making a Mario blanket now with the leftovers. Cool. Like that. I've been wanting to do a temperature blanket for a long time too, so I just noticed that Busy Hooker mentioned that, and I get distracted. Yeah, I do that too. So, well, we're at a little past 10 a.m. my time, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off unless anybody else has something they want to ask or say or do, or I just want to remind people that if you want to learn more about me, make sure you go to my website at KarenWhooley.com, and I showed you my shawl, Pache. If you want this pattern for free, you can subscribe to my newsletter and get this pattern for free. You can also follow me on Instagram. Let me pull my Instagram up here really fast. Follow me on Instagram. And you can also, if you're watching this on Rumble, you already know this, but if you're not, you can also follow me on Rumble, and that's my my Rumble channel, so make sure you check that out. And if you're interested in signing up for Rumble, that's my affiliate link right there at the bottom that you can use to sign up. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. It's the red button down below, and if you're on Rumble, it's up on top and it's green, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know whenever a new video is about to go live, or if I'm doing a static video that's been uploaded. So make sure you do that as well. I'm here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, so I'll see you guys next week. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I'm not going to do a little mini lesson, but if you have any questions about what we did today, I'm glad to answer those. So let's talk about stuff about crochet next week. Bye, Team Whooleygan. Have a good one.